Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the show. This is The Civil Point with none other than your host, moi, Ariana Dieva, and I am back with a brand new episode for tonight. And honestly, shit is getting weird. Shit is getting a little bit weird. They are gaining traction. This regime is gaining traction in regards to militarizing and institutionalizing martial law into the streets of the United States. We have so much to talk about, from opinions of Oregon courts to literally the fact that our Supreme Court is trying to now ban marijuana users from owning guns. And we're going to talk about the implications and the precedent that that specific argument sets if SCOTUS, once again, because they're corrupt and they're infiltrated with extremist Nazi propaganda and ideologies, we're going to talk about how that affects everyone in the United States. Because once again, didn't they run on protecting the Second Amendment, and now they're trying to take away the Second Amendment? You know how many right-wing Republicans smoke pot in middle America to deal with the day-to-day lives that have nothing going on with them? Like, come on. They're trying to we'll get into it. But we are going to get into a lot of stuff today because a lot has gone down. And the first thing I want to get into, but before we do all that, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss out on brand new episodes of the Civil Point podcast with moi, and we can discuss every insane thing that this administration is doing to try and restrict rights from human beings on American soil, especially restricting rights and ripping away rights from American citizens. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button on this podcast episode. It's brand new for you, as well as turn on that notification bell so you get notified when I'm live streaming. But let's get into the content for today. So, big decision from the U.S. Appeals Court in Oregon, Portland. Very big decision, and this sets major implications and precedent for President Trump currently. So this past week, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit ruled that the Trump administration can deploy Oregon National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon, after hearing arguments on October 9th. The administration argued that troops were needed to protect U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility after demonstrators clashed with federal agents, citing Federal Law 10 U.S.C. Section 12406. Has the courts seen what's going on in Portland? Has anyone seen what's going on in Portland? I mean, I'm not seeing clashes between ICE agents. The only people who are being aggressive are ICE agents. They are inciting crimes. They are trying to incite people to attack them. The only people doing anything wrong here are the enforcement officers that were sent to Portland to deteriorate and eradicate this uprising of rebellion that didn't ever exist. So how can a judge rule in favor of Trump here to send Oregon National Guard troops into the streets of Oregon when they are provoking and trying to provoke crimes to happen, to institutionalize martial law? Now, of course, the judge that ruled in Trump's favor is, in his back pocket, so we can assume there's no actual reasoning, because the reasoning is falsified and fake, that this judge would then apply the U.S. Code, Section 10, Title 10, to this issue. So if we look at Section 10, or Title 10 here, Title 10 of the U.S. Code, Section 12406. I have it up here, and I think it states Section 3, right? I'm pretty sure. Somewhere I read they cited Section 3. But in regards to Title 10 of the U.S. Code, 12406, the United States or any of the commonwealths or possessions is invaded or in danger of invasion by a foreign nation. There is a rebellion of danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. The president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state in such numbers as he considers necessary to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, or execute those laws. Orders for the purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states, or, in the case of the District of Columbia, through the commanding general of the National Guard of the District of Columbia. So they won in their court case because of this section of Title 10, Section 12406. But here's my thing about Section 12406. And again, they're picking and choosing, they're cherry picking what applies to these issues, to deploying National Guard troops into cities. And again, when I referenced Title 10, I referenced Title 10 with a specific caveat saying that you need judicial proceedings to go through the National Guard and have them infiltrate cities for a potential rebellion or invasion in regards to law in the United States. Here, what I think the judge is missing, who rendered the decision to allow Trump to allow troops and National Guard to invade Portland streets to suppress an invasion, to suppress a faulty invasion that doesn't exist, is that they missed that orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states. That means the governor has to ask the president to send National Guard troops in, right? Not that the president can send National Guard troops into a city without the governor's request. So again, we have cherry picking of our federal code that is clear, and they have sidestepped our federal code to oblige to Trump and bend the knee to Trump so they can make him happy and feel more good and more big about himself, like he's a big shot, when in reality, if we go and appeal this decision, look at that specific sentence, the governor needs to ask the president to send troops in. The president can't just send troops into any city at any time. So again, we have courts that are creating new precedents that ignore constitutional law, that ignore federal code, and that misinterpret it and rewrite it for a precedent that then the president can then have extreme overriding authority and overreach his army, his personal militia, into the streets of cities for tackling dissent. And in this case, tackling peaceful protests. This is not okay. This is a manipulation and a perversion and a complete oversight of this ruling from this Portland judge. It's not okay. And it is U.S. District Court Judge Karen Emergert. I don't even know how to pronounce that last name. Emergert. So she wrote on October 4th that protests had been generally peaceful since June and granted a temporary restraining order, saying these incidents are inexcusable. So altogether, I think our court is corrupt, our justice system is corrupt, and I keep saying it because it is. It's just a corrupt system right now. And what do we do other than speak the truth and expose the corruptness of the system by exposing the complete oversights of laws that they are citing in their opinions? And we just need to continue talking about these laws and these oversights and these opinions that give our president unprecedented presidential power while ignoring the actual words of our federal laws. So altogether, again, it's more perversion, it's more secrecy when it comes to our federal government, when it comes to Trump specifically. He's big mad that he cannot get into a state without going through the proper procedures. And now this precedent set by the court today in regards to him now being allowed to deploy National Guard troops into a city now sets a precedent that he will be able to do it in any city. But hopefully we have proper representation and lawyers and attorneys when we tackle these issues, because clearly our federal law states in Section 10 that that the judge is citing in their opinion, and that Trump argued and the judge sided on with to develop this opinion. It clearly says orders of these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states, which means the governors have to ask the president to deploy troops into our cities. The president cannot just deploy troops willy-nilly at the snap of his fingers like he's a dictator. There are processes that follows, and there are other sections in Title 10 that also prevent our president, our sitting president, from deploying troops into our cities unauthorized. So again, it's just a misrepresentation of our federal law. But we're going to go ahead and move on here tonight, because we're going to go ahead and talk about, is it surprising? Is it really surprising at this point that we have people surrounded in the Republican Party with text chains that are being leaked with racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism? It's just a normal day. I just want to say one thing too. I'm solid and secure in my political beliefs. And if someone thinks that my political beliefs are shitty because I put humanity over money, I put humanity over literally America, then I don't give two fucks what you think. Because you're supporting a convicted 34-count felon and voted him into the presidency. You're supporting a man who was found guilty of rape allegations. You are supporting a man who is destroying the fabric of America's democracy. So I can sit here and lay my head at night knowing how my political beliefs, if you want to call them political beliefs, I call it having a little bit of empathy and humanity. I fall asleep at night with my head on the pillow knowing I'm speaking into a camera, saying things to defend people, not tear people down and not rip away people's rights like our current administration and regime is trying to do actively every single day of this administration. So you guys can say anything you want in my comments. I don't give two shits, because I know I stand 10 toes down on what I believe. And what I believe is protecting human rights, human dignity, and not destroying groups of people based on prejudices that are based on some mythical book that you guys feel God delivered to you, hand delivered to you, when it wasn't hand delivered. It was written by a man who's looking to manipulate you and oppress you centuries ago. So I stand 10 toes down in my beliefs. I stand 10 toes down, and I don't give two shits what people say in my comments, because what I'm saying angers you, because I can sit here in all my truth while you sit there mad, angry, and upset at people who don't actually affect your daily lives. So I stand in my truth because I'm not mad about anything. I stand 10 toes down on the fact that humans exist. Humans exist. All humans exist, and we need to keep it that way. So let's go ahead and move on here, because I fall asleep at night knowing that I don't have text chains like this in my phone. Like, I know that my text chains will never be leaked to the point where there's a Nazi streak and anti-Semitism and a racist remarks that are intentionally made because they support the eradication of groups of people. I lay my head at bed at night knowing that those text threads don't exist in my phone and that they will never be able to be leaked, because I would never say these heinous, gross, vile things. So, but Trump, he's part of the swamp, so obviously he's going to be around these people. But let's take a look at this breaking news from Politico. They went ahead and broke some news that Trump nominee says he has a Nazi streak, bashes MLK Jr. Day, according to more texts that are being exposed from the right, the racists, the anti-Semites. They want to call everyone else racist and anti-Semites, and they're being persecuted, when in their text threads, they're the one persecuting every other group, every other marginalized group of people. So it's, again, point a finger, you got 4 pointing back at you. So let's talk about this. Paul Ingracias is in a bid to lead a whistleblower agency is set for Senate confirmation hearing Thursday. So Paul Ingracia, President Donald Trump's embattled nominee to lead the office of special counsel, told a group of fellow Republicans in a text chain that Martin Luther King Jr. holiday should be tossed into the 7th circle of hell. Like, this is insanity. This is him. He just looks. He literally just looks. You know who he looks like? What's his name? The main character from American Psycho. You gotta watch out for those pretty boys. He's a pretty boy, but something ain't right in that noggin. But it's just sick that we have people surrounding our president who have these ideologies. Not only notable people in our offices, but people that are being considered for these offices, people that are being considered for these positions. And then he uses Italian slurs for black people. He also says no to Mongolian holidays, no to MLK Day. He also says every single one needs to be eviscerated. There we go. I'm using that word. I have been using that word. That these fucktards, these shitholes, want to eviscerate communities. And people in my comments continue to say, oh, who's saying they want to get rid of people? Who said they want to eviscerate and destroy and eradicate all communities? These are the people that are saying it. And I stand corrected and proven in fact with physical evidence, timeline, receipts, everything to say that these people want to eviscerate communities because they don't see anyone else as human other than their own selves. So I stand vindicated. These people want to eviscerate communities, and Paul Ingracia said it right in his text thread. And again, he is using these racist ideologies, anti-Semite positions, and positions such as misogyny to justify why white people should exist at a higher level than black people, than Spanish people, than a woman. Like, it's right there. So it's just insane that this man, Paul, is being considered for a position when he's saying MLK Jr. was the 1960s George Floyd, and his holiday should be ended and tossed into the 7th circle of hell where it belongs. Tell me that's not some sick ideology. MLK is a peaceful protester, and we know how this regime thinks about protesters. They think they're terrorists. And again, these are people that represent the Republican Party. And if all these text chains keep coming out about these people, you kind of have to start thinking that all of these people think the same way and label them as a terrorist group. They, again, pointing fingers at people expressing their right to freedom of speech for dissenting an administration that's trying to remove and repeal rights and civil rights actions. And then they're pointing fingers, calling these peaceful protesters terrorists, when deep in their text chains, this evidence exists. Calling MLK Jr. Day the George Floyd of today, of the 1960s, and then saying MLK Jr. Day deserves to be in the seventh circle of hell. That's what I call extreme racism. Not only racism at that point, that's just complete denigration of a community for a community leader that paved the way for civil rights for Black people to have equality in the United States. So basically what Paul is saying here is that fuck Black people, fuck their equality, their day should never be had, and they should still be in the fields picking cotton in 90-degree weather in Atlanta, Georgia, on a random August afternoon. That's what he's saying. And this is what these people believe. And honestly, the writing is literally not even on the walls. It's in the text and it's being exposed. And even if you look at these text threads from the young Republicans, all of this is being exposed. And it's like, how can we sit here and say, and just turn a blind eye, let alone have our vice president justify these texts as, oh, they're just kids. Well, was Trayvon Martin a kid when he got shot? No. So what makes these 30-year-old white men and women, in the eyes of J.D. Vance, kids? I would like the explanation to that, especially when you have this, where you have Politico dropping the receipts here that one of the group chat says sex is gay. Sex? It was rape. Epic. Imagine describing rape as epic. Did you just admit to graping someone? Like, it's sick. These are sick individuals who have sick ideologies, who again just want to control and manipulate public consumption of social norms, and they want this to be the social norms. Yet the left, I'm not seeing the left being exposed with these crazy, disgusting texts, and I'm not trying to generalize here, but right now, predominantly, the Republican Party is being exposed for the racist, anti-Semites, misogynistic, sick, sadistic, vile human beings that we all know that they are. And it's the truth. And all of these goddamn text threads being exposed prove it. From Paul Ingracia to all the young Republicans who were in this chat. It's just disgusting. And some of the texts, you can read them right at the top here. We're officially under consideration for a Trump endorsement, which means Trump is trying to endorse these people with these gross, vile ideas. Great, I love Hitler. Kick the bitch. Stay in the closet, F word. This girl is fully retarded. They love the watermelon people. Like, it's sick. How can anyone sit here and defend this? It's sick. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and move on here because, again, I'm proving my point that the Republicans continue to backslide in accountability. And that is where we have a problem in America. And we're going to get to that in a little bit when it comes to the gun violence aspect of what I want to talk about today, because it proves that accountability matters. Accountability creates deterrence in the United States. And without accountability, then if someone sees someone like them get away with murder, guess what? They're going to try it too if they get to that point in their head where they're like, well, you know what? I don't see anyone else being in prison for this for too long. Maybe I'll try it myself and get away with it. So that is the overall issue in the United States is that no one has accountability. America has an accountability problem. America doesn't have a gun problem or a racism problem, even though it's true. It's just we need the accountability to match the crimes. That is what we need. So, again, the Republicans, again, the conservatives and Republicans tend to grift and graft to these ideologies that hurt people, that demonize people, that create people as the other instead of trying to create a society where people and of every culture and identity can live peacefully. And again, it's shown here. Brian Tyler Cohen went and got this audio and video of Jack Ciattarelli, the GOP candidate for governor in New Jersey, saying that they want to ban same-sex marriage. Let's go ahead and play it.
We want to have a ban of same-sex marriage. And I know my brother voted against it. I'm here to do it again. We talk about family. A family comes into place when a man and a woman gets married, not the same sex. We oppose same-sex. We oppose same-sex marriage.
We oppose same-sex marriage. This is what Jack says, a candidate for governor in New Jersey. And like, if you oppose same-sex marriage, don't get married to a man then. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I just don't understand the moral compass of these people that feel like they can dictate what is morally acceptable and natural to every human being. Like, biology cannot be generalized in a sense of individuality. Like, you can't generalize biology. Everyone's biological makeup, everyone's brain chemistry is different. So again, they're trying to conform this idea that everyone is the same, that marriage has to be between a man and a woman because that's the only thing that exists naturally. And their only argument to say that man and a woman is acceptable and natural is that it produces babies. But that is just a product of sexual nature. It's not a definitive aspect of what naturality means in human beings. It's a product. So to sit here again and we continue having to fight this argument that homosexuality is technically natural because it's natural for other human beings to be attracted to the same-sex people. And we continue having this fight and this argument about it. And it's like, when does it end? Like, be you. Like, go do you. Like, you don't want to marry a man. You don't want to, like, be a gay 2 a.m. demon queen. Like, then don't be a gay 2 a.m. demon queen. Go home to your wife and kids and be happy. Why is anyone else affecting you? Like, I just don't get it. And, like, half of these fucking Republican retards are sitting here saying, like, oh my God, gay people this, gay people that. They're so worried about gay people. And it's like, y'all are really telling on yourselves. Because why are you so obsessed with gay people if you're not interested in gay people? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I'm not worried about what you're doing in your bedroom with your wife. Like, why are you so worried about what someone like me is doing in my bedroom alone privately? It just doesn't make sense. The dots are not connecting here. The math is not mathing. It's about control, and it's about controlling a society, unfortunately. But again, if you don't want to marry a man, don't marry a man. If you want to marry a woman, go marry a fucking woman. That's if you can fucking find one with your fucking sick, vile thoughts. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and continue on here. It's just insane what's going on. But now we're going to tackle a very big issue that I find is going to set a dangerous precedent in the United States. I keep talking about a domino effect, that if you give someone an inch, they will take a mile if they're greedy motherfuckers. And this administration, this regime is greedy motherfuckers personified. Picture in the fucking dictionary. So when it comes to the Supreme Court now, they're considering restricting and removing the legalities of gun owners who smoke weed on a regular basis. And this is so random, and someone will say this is random, but it's not random. It's not random in the slightest bit. They have flirted around the idea of removing the Second Amendment from certain groups of people. So when we talk about the Supreme Court currently right now, under consideration on whether people who regularly smoke pot can legally own guns, they're flirting with the idea of making sure that they can prejudicially restrict the rights of certain groups of people. This may not seem serious, but in a way, again, it is very serious, because one restriction on a categorized group of people can then lead to the restriction of other categorized groups of people, such as the LGBTQ plus community. And when that precedent is set, then that precedent can be unequally applied. So let's get into it today about the Supreme Court and the impact that this decision could have if they rule that everyday marijuana smokers cannot legally own guns. So, the Supreme Court is now considering whether regular marijuana users can legally own guns. And I think that's a dangerous precedent waiting to be set. If SCOTUS rules that marijuana users cannot legally own firearms, that decision will once again disproportionately affect Black and brown communities, the same communities that already receive harsher sentences and face more aggressive policing for the same crimes as their white counterparts. Once again, this corrupted court is using correlation to define causation, creating sweeping restrictions without evidence, logic, or accountability. And that's where today's conversation begins. Let's discuss gun violence, gun reform, and the true issue that safeguards the people who commit these heinous crimes that cause your children to be unalived. As well, let's talk about the real issue at contention here. Is it the guns? Or is it the criminals who use them? Or is it the justice system that excuses the criminal? Listen, criminals will always find access to guns. What criminals should not find access to are reduced sentences, political pardons, and more frequently, judicial biases. So, when we talk about the Second Amendment, people tend to forget that the U.S. Constitution wasn't written to give rights. It was written to protect rights that already belong to American citizens. And what's happening now, with the Supreme Court considering whether regular marijuana users can illegally own guns, shows exactly how fragile that protection can become when politics starts mixing with constitutional interpretation. Our current administration has made it clear they are not here to protect all Americans. They want to control and imprison particular Americans through subconscious prejudice and unfair arbitrary policy. Here's the contradiction, though. So, under federal law, anyone who uses an unlawful controlled substance, which will include marijuana still, can be restricted from owning a gun. But marijuana isn't mentioned in the Constitution, right? So, it's a classification under the U.S. Code, not a constitutional clause. That means the issue technically falls to the states. And under the 10th Amendment, states have the authority to regulate laws not explicitly outlined in the Constitution. So, yes, that creates a contradiction. You have states legalizing marijuana, while the federal government still considers those same people unfit to own guns as they look to revisit this case. It's a direct clash between state sovereignty and federal oversight. And it exposes how inconsistent our justice system can be when it tries to police human behavior instead of protecting constitutional balance. So now let's talk about mental health, because this is a part. It is just as important and just as misunderstood. Mental health is a broad term used to describe people who suffer from brain chemistry abnormalities. Mental health can become a condition, but it can also happen to any human spontaneously. A mental health crisis sometimes isn't a permanent condition. It's an event. It's an event that can happen to anyone at any time. You can live your entire life without a diagnosis and suddenly experience a mental break because of trauma, grief, or stress can cause you a mental health crisis. So how do you legislate something that's situational, unpredictable, and honestly, human? You can't. Not without overreaching, not without turning the law into a weapon against groups of people who may never pose a threat. Using this categorization method by broad terms such as mental health creates more distrust in the application of law, as our current administration tends to fill specialist positions with cankle cronies rather than listen to true health professionals. And that brings us back to intoxication and instability. When you're intoxicated, whether from alcohol, weed, or anything else, yes, your judgment is impaired. That's why we don't let people drive under the influence. But if intoxication equals instability, and instability equals disqualification from our Second Amendment, then we're saying anyone who drinks, smokes, or uses any mind-altering substance shouldn't be allowed to own a gun. That would disqualify millions of American adults. So if we followed that logic, nearly the entire country would lose their Second Amendment rights. According to the National Survey of Drug Use and Health, 58.7 million adults experience some form of mental illness. Of these individuals, 20.4 million also had a substance use disorder. 48.5 million people aged 12 or older had a substance use disorder. Among adults with many or any mental illness, 42.4% used illicit drugs in the past year. This number jumps to 51.9% among those with serious mental illness. That's why this can't be a federal issue anymore. The federal government needs to take a step back. The federal government in this administration tries to infer causation with no substantial evidence. Instead, it's truly correlation. Lawmakers are not mental health professionals. That is one thing we have to be remembered of. And they're not behavioral scientists. Their job is to create laws, not to interpret human behavior through a political lens of bias. This is where specialists and data come in. This is why we have agencies, experts, and mental health professionals, people whose entire careers are built and dedicated on studying crisis behavior, not exploiting it for headlines. But because the truth is simple, gun violence will never fully disappear. Criminals will always find access, but restricting the rights of certain groups of people, marijuana users, transgender people, or anyone else, that's not going to stop gun violence. It's not going to stop crime. That's just discrimination hiding behind policy. So what's the solution though? It's not blanket bans, it's a case-by-case accountability. It's using due process the way it was designed to evaluate situations individually, not ideologically. Messed up on that word there. And yes, that means there will still be casualties. That's the unfortunate truth about living in a free society. But that's also what our justice system is for. To interpret disputes under the law, not to preemptively strip rights away out of fear or politics. So, when it comes down to it, blanket restrictions on gun ownership based on identity or lifestyles aren't just unconstitutional, they're downright un-American. And here's where the real unfairness kicks in. Because this isn't just about who can own a gun. It's about who gets punished for owning one, who gets criminalized, and who gets forgiven. Our justice system has never applied accountability equally. That's not an opinion. That's a fact backed by data. White people who commit gun crimes or other violent offenses often receive shorter sentences or plea deals that people of color would never be offered. Meanwhile, Black and brown Americans are disproportionately arrested, convicted, and sentenced more harshly for the exact same crimes. So, when we talk about restricting access to guns under the banner of public safety, what you're really doing, whether consciously or not, is handing more power to a justice system that already discriminates. If you ban marijuana users from owning guns, guess who's going to be targeted first? It's not the suburban white guy with a medical card. It's the Black man pulled over for a minor traffic stop. If you add transgender people to that list of banned people who cannot own guns legally, it's not about gun safety anymore. It's about social control. That's the deeper layer to this. The laws may not look neutral on paper, but the enforcement has always reflected bias. And until that imbalance is addressed, every new restriction, no matter how logical it sounds, will hit marginalized people first and hardest. So when we talk about gun rights, we can't just talk about access. We have to talk about application and, more importantly, no prejudice convictions for these crimes. Because a right that's applied unequally is not a right. It's a privilege. Here, I'm articulating something most people miss when they debate gun rights. And let me just preface this. I am not agreeing with Charlie Kirk's political framing. I am agreeing with a philosophical truth that's hard to swallow. Total safety and total freedom can't coexist. A balanced and pragmatic middle ground must somehow exist. Charlie once said that few gun deaths a year are worth it to preserve the Second Amendment. Now, I think the way he said that was callous, dismissive, and completely devoid of empathy, but the underlying truth is this. We can't completely eradicate gun violence. That's the cost of living in a free society. What we can do is build systems that hold people accountable, apply justice fairly, and prevent access for those who are truly unstable defined by professionals, not just politically unpopular and partisan talking points used to pander for a few votes in an election. Because restrictions doesn't always mean protection. Sometimes restrictions is just control dressed up as concern. If the justice system consistently applied fair sentencing without racial bias, without political favoritism, without arbitrary leniency, then you'd see a natural deterrent effect. People commit crimes when they don't believe there will be consequences, or when they see examples of the people like them getting away with those crimes, aka gun violence and mass shootings. Deterrence comes from certainty, not just severity. If people know that committing a violent act will lead to a fair but firm punishment, regardless of race or privilege, the rate of those crimes naturally drops. It's not that America has a gun problem, it has an accountability problem. It's not that we lack laws, it's that we apply them unequally. And when justice isn't equal, deterrence doesn't exist. It becomes performative. The right to bear arms is meaningless if justice isn't applied equally. And that's where our focus should be, not by taking rights away from the vulnerable. So when we talk about gun violence, when we talk about how to prevent gun violence on human beings, on children, on people going to grocery stores or people going to school, it tends to miss the point. The natural deterrence to gun violence is applying justice fairly and making sure these sick individuals who choose to end lives are imprisoned for a long period of time with no chance of getting out. That is how we deter gun violence. It will never be eradicated, but we can deter it with actual fair punishments and serving sentences to the maximum. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Civil Point podcast. If you haven't already, you can definitely go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And before I do, just remember that gun violence needs to be talked about. But we need to talk about, is it the guns? Yes, because they kill people. Is it the people? Yes, because people kill people. But we also need to talk about the larger issue at hand and the deterrence that could play a greater effect in gun violence deaths when we apply our laws to the maximum extent for homicide and mass murders. We need to hold our justice system accountable just as much as we hold the criminals and the guns accountable. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you guys have an amazing night. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. This is The Civil Point with none other than me, your host, Ariana Dieva. I will catch you on the next episode. Bye.